The clock on the wall showed 9:15 p.m. when 17-year-old Damon finished mopping the last aisle at Miller's grocery store. His shift supervisor, Mrs. Rodriguez, handed him his weekly paycheck with a smile. "Good work tonight, kid. See you Thursday." Damon folded the check carefully and slipped it into his wallet. This job meant everything to him and his grandmother. Every dollar helped pay for groceries, utilities, and saving up for community college next fall. He grabbed his backpack from the employee break room and headed out into the cool evening air. The walk home was always peaceful. Oak Street was lined with nice houses, well-kept lawns, and streetlights that actually worked. Damon liked this route because it felt safe, even though some neighbors would give him strange looks. He kept his head down and walked at a steady pace, just like his grandmother always told him. Officer Blake Turner was having a slow night. He'd been patrolling the West Side District for 3 hours without a single call. The radio crackled occasionally with activity from other parts of town, but his sector remained quiet. Turner drummed his fingers on the steering wheel and sipped cold coffee from his thermos. That's when he spotted the teenager walking. Down Oak Street, Turner slowed his patrol car and watched through the passenger window. A young black male, average height, wearing dark clothes and carrying a backpack. Turner's mind immediately went to the bulletin board back at the station. There had been a string of break-ins in this neighborhood over the past month. TVs, laptops, jewelry. Someone was hitting these houses when families were out for the evening. Turner made a U-turn and pulled up beside the teenager. He rolled down his window. "Hey, you there. Stop walking." Damon looked up, startled. A police car had pulled alongside him, and the officer inside was staring at him intensely. Damon's heart started beating faster, but he tried to stay calm. His grandmother had prepared him for moments like this. "Yes, sir." Damon stopped walking and turned to face the car. Turner got out of his vehicle, his hand resting on his belt. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" "I'm walking home from work, sir." Damon kept his voice respectful and clear. "I work at Miller's Grocery on 5th Street. "Work, huh?" Turner looked Damon up and down. "Kinda late to be walking around here, don't you think?" Damon glanced at his phone. 'Twas 9:20 p.m. "I just got off my shift. I live about 6 blocks from here with my grandmother." Turner stepped closer. "You got some ID on you?" "Yes, sir." Damon slowly reached into his back pocket and pulled out his wallet.
His hands were steady, but inside he felt nervous.
He handed over his driver's license. Turner examined the ID under his flashlight. The address showed a house on Maple Street, which was indeed about 6 blocks away. The photo matched the kid standing in front of him. But something about this whole situation bothered Turner. What was a teenager from that part of town doing walking through this neighborhood so late? "You said you work at Miller's?" Turner handed the license back. "Yes, sir. I can show you my employee ID if you want." Damon reached for his wallet again. "Don't move so fast," Turner snapped. "Keep your hands where I can see them." Damon froze. "Sorry, sir. I was just going to show you my work ID to prove I'm telling the truth." Turner studied the teenager's face. The kid seemed nervous, which in Turner's experience usually meant guilt. "We've had some break-ins in this area lately. Houses getting hit when people aren't home. You know anything about that?" "No, sir. I don't know anything about any break-ins. I just walk this way home from work because it's well lit and safe." "Safe for who?" Turner muttered under his breath. Damon wasn't sure he heard correctly. "Excuse me, sir?" I said, "What's in the backpack?" "Just my work clothes and some homework." Damon shifted the backpack on his shoulders. "I'm a senior at Roosevelt High School." Turner had heard enough. This kid was giving him too many details, like he was trying too hard to sound innocent. In Turner's 15 years on the force, he'd learned to trust his gut. And his gut told him this teenager didn't belong in this neighborhood. "Turn around and put your hands on the car," Turner ordered. Damon's eyes widened. "Sir, I haven't done anything wrong. I showed you my ID. I told you where I work and where I live." I said, "Turn around." From her kitchen window, Mrs. Patterson watched the scene unfold on the street below. She'd been washing dishes when she noticed the police car pull up. The officer was talking to a young man she'd seen walking past her house several times before. The boy always seemed polite, keeping to himself and never causing any trouble. Something about the interaction didn't look right to Mrs. Patterson. The officer seemed aggressive, and the young man looked scared. She quietly opened her kitchen window to hear better. "I'm going to ask you one more time to cooperate," Turner said, his voice getting louder. "Turn around and put your hands on the car." Damon's voice shook slightly. "Sir, can you please tell me what I'm being accused of?" I have a right to know why you're detaining me. That was it. Turner had had enough of this kid's attitude. You're being accused of resisting arrest. Now turn around before this gets worse for you. Resisting arrest? Damon couldn't believe what he was hearing. But I haven't been arrested for anything. I'm just trying to walk home from my job. Mrs. Patterson grabbed her cell phone from the counter. Something was very wrong here. She started recording through her window, making sure to capture everything happening on the street. Turner stepped forward and grabbed Damon's arm. I told you to turn around. Don't make me tell you again. Damon didn't resist, but he also didn't move as quickly as Turner wanted. The officer spun him around forcefully and pushed him against the patrol car. I'm complying, sir. Please don't hurt me. Damon's voice was louder now, and Mrs. Patterson could hear the fear in it. Turner pulled out his handcuffs. You should have thought about that before you decided to argue with me. I wasn't arguing. I was just asking questions. Same thing. Turner clicked the handcuffs around Damon's wrists. You think you can just walk through any neighborhood you want? You think these people want to see you wandering around their streets at night? Mrs. Patterson's hands trembled as she held her phone. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Damon felt the metal cuffs bite into his wrists. Sir, this isn't right. I haven't done anything illegal. Turner leaned close to Damon's ear. Kid, let me give you some free advice. This isn't your neighborhood. These aren't your people. Maybe next time you'll think twice before taking a stroll where you don't belong. Turner opened the back door of his patrol car and guided Damon inside. As he closed the door, he looked around the quiet street and smiled to himself. Another potential problem handled before it could escalate. What Turner didn't know was that his body camera, which he thought he had turned off at the beginning of his shift, was still recording everything. A recent software update had changed the camera settings, automatically activating them whenever an officer made physical contact with a civilian. Mrs. Patterson watched from her window as the patrol car drove away with the young man in the back seat. She stopped recording and immediately called her daughter, a lawyer who worked downtown. Something terrible just happened. She whispered into the phone. I think I just witnessed a young man get arrested for absolutely nothing. The patrol car disappeared around the corner, carrying Damon toward a night that would change everything for everyone involved. Dorothy Williams checked the clock on her microwave for the 10th time in 5 minutes. It was almost 11 p.m., and her grandson still wasn't home from work. Damon was never late without calling. He knew how much she worried, especially when he had to walk home alone in the dark. She tried calling his cell phone again, but it went straight to voicemail. Her hands shook as she dialed Miller's grocery store, hoping maybe he'd stayed late to help with inventory or something. Miller's grocery, this is Carlos. Hi, this is Dorothy Williams. I'm looking for my grandson Damon. He works there in the evenings? Oh yeah, Mrs. Williams. Damon left about 2 hours ago. His shift ended at 9:15. Dorothy's stomach dropped. Are you sure? He's not there helping with anything. No, ma'am. I watched him leave myself. Said he was heading straight home like always. After hanging up, Dorothy paced around her small living room. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones. Damon was responsible and reliable. In the 3 years he'd been working at the grocery store, he'd never once been late without explanation. She called the police department. Metro Police, how can I help you? I need to report a missing person. My grandson didn't come home from work tonight. The dispatcher sounded bored. How old is the missing person? He's 17. Ma'am, teenagers stay out late all the time. Has it been 24 hours since you last saw him? No, but this isn't like him. He always calls if he's going to be late. Something's happened. I understand your concern, but we can't file a missing person report until he's been gone for 24 hours. Maybe he's with friends or met someone after work. Dorothy wanted to scream. These people didn't know Damon. He didn't have time for hanging out with friends. Between school, work, and helping her around the house, his schedule was packed. Can you at least check if he's been arrested or taken to a hospital? The dispatcher paused. Let me transfer you to someone who can check the system. Dorothy waited on hold for what felt like forever. Finally, a different voice came on the line. Ma'am, I show a juvenile was brought in tonight matching your grandson's description, but I can't give you details over the phone. You'll need to come down to the station. Dorothy's heart pounded. Is he okay? What happened? I really can't discuss it over the phone. You'll need to speak with someone in person. Dorothy grabbed her purse and car keys. Her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, had always told her to call if she needed anything, even late at night. Dorothy knocked on her door, trying not to wake the whole building. Mrs. Chen answered in her bathrobe, immediately seeing the panic on Dorothy's face. "What's wrong?" "Damon's been arrested, but I don't know why. Can you drive me to the police station?" "I'm too shaken up to drive myself." 20 minutes later, they sat in the lobby of the Metro Police Department. The officer at the front desk barely looked up when Dorothy explained why she was there. "The juvenile detention supervisor won't be back until morning. You can't see the minor until then. But he's my grandson. I raised him. I need to know what happened. Ma'am, there's nothing I can do tonight. Come back at 8 a.m. Dorothy felt helpless. Her grandson was somewhere in this building, probably scared and confused, and these people were treating him like a criminal. She didn't sleep at all that night. Meanwhile, Damon sat in a holding cell at the juvenile detention center. The concrete walls were cold, and the fluorescent lights never turned off. He'd been given one phone call, but his grandmother's line was busy when he tried. He didn't know any other numbers by heart. The intake officer had taken his personal belongings and given him an orange jumpsuit. When Damon asked what he was being charged with, the officer just read from a clipboard: resisting arrest, loitering with intent to commit a crime, and disorderly conduct. Damon couldn't understand how any of this had happened. He'd been walking home from work, just like he did 3 nights a week. He'd been polite to the officer, answered all his questions, and shown his identification. How had that turned into 3 criminal charges? The next morning, Dorothy was waiting outside the police station when it opened. The juvenile detention supervisor, a tired-looking woman named Ms. Rodriguez, finally agreed to meet with her. "Your grandson was arrested last night for several charges. He'll see a judge this afternoon for his arraignment." "What charges? What did he supposedly do?" Ms. Rodriguez read from a file. "Resisting arrest, loitering with intent to commit a crime, and disorderly conduct." Dorothy stared at her in disbelief. "That's impossible. Damon was walking home from work. He's never been in trouble a day in his life." "Ma'am, that's what the arresting officer reported. Your grandson will be assigned a public defender who can explain everything." "Can I see him?" "For 15 minutes. Follow me." When Dorothy saw Damon through the thick glass window, her heart broke. He looked exhausted and scared. They spoke through a phone system that made everything sound distant and hollow. "Grandma, I don't understand what happened. I was just walking home from work like always. Tell me exactly what the officer said to you." Damon recounted the entire incident. Dorothy listened with growing anger. Her grandson had done nothing wrong, yet here he was, locked up like a criminal. "We're going to fight this, baby. This isn't right." That afternoon, public defender Lisa Chen was assigned to Damon's case. She was young, overworked, and handling 37 other cases that week. She had 15 minutes to review Damon's file before his arraignment. The police report painted a very different picture than what Damon had told his grandmother. According to Officer Turner, Damon had been acting suspiciously in a neighborhood where several break-ins had occurred. When questioned, he became argumentative and aggressive. Turner claimed Damon refused to cooperate and had to be physically restrained. Lisa met with Damon in a small conference room before the hearing. He was still wearing the orange jumpsuit and his eyes were red from lack of sleep. "Damon, I'm Lisa Chen, your public defender. I've read the police report and I want to hear your side of the story." Damon told her everything just as he'd told his grandmother. Lisa took notes, but her expression remained neutral. In her experience, police reports and defendant statements rarely matched up. The truth usually fell somewhere in the middle. "The charges against you are serious," Lisa explained. "Resisting arrest is a misdemeanor that could mean up to 6 months in juvenile detention. The other charges could add more time. But I didn't resist arrest. I didn't do any of the things he said I did." Lisa had heard similar claims from dozens of clients. "Damon, I believe you feel you didn't do anything wrong. But the officer has a different version of events. We need to focus on getting you out of detention today and then work on building your defense." In the courtroom, Judge Martinez reviewed the charges. The prosecutor, a stern-faced man named Mr. Davidson, argued that Damon was a flight risk and should remain in detention until trial. "Your Honor, the defendant was found in a neighborhood where he doesn't belong, acting suspiciously near homes that have been burglarized. When confronted by police, he became combative and uncooperative." Lisa stood up. "Your Honor, my client is an honor roll student with no prior criminal record. He was walking home from his part-time job when this incident occurred. He poses no flight risk and has strong community ties through his grandmother and his job." Judge Martinez looked at Damon, who stood quietly beside his lawyer. "Young man, do you understand the charges against you?" "Yes, sir. But I didn't do any of those things." The judge set bail at $2,000 and scheduled a preliminary hearing for the following week. Dorothy had to borrow money from her church to pay the bail bondsman. As they walked out of the courthouse, Dorothy put her arm around her grandson. "We're going to prove your innocence, baby. This officer made a mistake, and we're going to make sure everyone knows it." But proving innocence would be harder than either of them imagined. Officer Turner had already filed his report, and his word carried significant weight in the criminal justice system. What they didn't know was that the truth was captured on video, waiting to be discovered. That evening, Mrs. Patterson called her daughter again. "I can't stop thinking about what I saw last night. That young man didn't do anything wrong." Her daughter, a civil rights attorney named Rebecca Patterson, had been thinking about her mother's story all day. "Mom, did you record any of it?" "Yes, I got most of it on my phone. I think you need to contact the public defender's office. That video might be the key to helping this young man." Mrs. Patterson looked at her phone where the video was saved. She'd watched it several times, and each viewing made her more certain that she'd witnessed an injustice. Tomorrow she would make the call that would change everything. Lisa Chen sat in her cramped office at 6 a.m., a cup of cold coffee beside a stack of case files that seemed to multiply overnight. The public defender's office was always understaffed and overworked. But something about Damon Williams' case bothered her more than usual. She'd been handling criminal defense for 5 years, and she'd developed a sense for when clients were telling the truth. Damon's story had a ring of authenticity that she couldn't ignore. The way he spoke, the details he remembered, the genuine confusion in his voice. It all pointed to someone who had been wrongfully accused. Lisa picked up Officer Turner's report and read it again. According to Turner, Damon had been lurking in the neighborhood, acting suspiciously near houses that had been burglarized. When approached, Damon allegedly became hostile and tried to walk away. Turner claimed he had to use physical force when Damon aggressively resisted being questioned, but Damon's version was completely different. He said he was polite throughout the encounter, answered all questions honestly, and never resisted anything. Someone was lying, and Lisa needed to figure out who. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. "Public Defender's Office, this is Lisa Chen." "Ms. Chen, my name is Rebecca Patterson. I'm an attorney here in town, and my mother witnessed an arrest 2 nights ago that I think relates to one of your cases." Lisa straightened up. "Which case?" "A teenager named Damon Williams. My mother lives on Oak Street and saw the entire incident from her kitchen window. She also recorded part of it on her phone." Lisa's heart rate quickened. "Are you serious?" "Very serious. My mother was so disturbed by what she saw that she couldn't sleep. She's convinced the young man did nothing wrong. Can you bring the video to my office today? We'll be there in an hour." After hanging up, Lisa immediately began researching Officer Blake Turner. What she found made her stomach turn. In the past 2 years, Turner had made 43 arrests in the West Side District. 38 of those arrests were young Black or Hispanic males, most charged with vague offenses like loitering or disorderly conduct. Lisa dug deeper into the court records. Of Turner's recent arrests, 12 cases had been dismissed due to lack of evidence. 8 defendants had pled guilty to lesser charges, probably to avoid the risk of harsher sentences. Only 3 cases had gone to trial, and 2 of those had resulted in acquittals. The pattern was clear, but proving it would be another matter entirely. Mrs. Patterson arrived at Lisa's office carrying her phone and a look of determination. Rebecca Patterson accompanied her, providing moral support and legal perspective. "Show me what you recorded," Lisa said, clearing space on her desk. Mrs. Patterson played the video. The quality wasn't perfect due to the distance and lighting, but the audio was clear enough to hear the conversation. Lisa watched in amazement as the footage completely contradicted Turner's report. On the video, Damon was clearly cooperative and respectful. He answered questions, provided identification, and never raised his voice or made threatening gestures. Turner, on the other hand, seemed aggressive from the start, escalating the situation without justification. "This is incredible," Lisa whispered. "This completely changes everything." "I knew something was wrong," Mrs. Patterson said. "That boy was just trying to get home, and that officer treated him like a criminal for no reason." Lisa made copies of the video and immediately filed a motion with the court requesting all body camera footage from the arrest. If Turner's camera had been recording, it would provide even more evidence of his misconduct. The next day, Lisa visited Damon at his grandmother's house. The young man was trying to maintain a normal routine, attending school and going to work, but the stress of the pending charges was obvious. "Damon, I have some good news. A witness recorded part of your arrest and the video supports your version of events." Damon's eyes lit up for the first time since his arrest. "Really? Someone saw what happened?" "Mrs. Patterson lives across the street from where you were arrested. She was washing dishes and saw the whole thing through her kitchen window." Dorothy Williams wiped tears from her eyes. "I knew my grandson was telling the truth. I've raised him since he was 5 years old and he's never lied to me about anything important." Lisa showed them the video on her laptop. Watching it was emotional for all of them, but especially for Damon, who was reliving the worst night of his life. "The prosecutor's office has to provide me with Turner's body camera footage," Lisa explained. "If it was recording, we'll have even more evidence." But when Lisa received the discovery materials the following week, she was disappointed to learn that Turner claimed his body camera had malfunctioned and wasn't recording during the arrest. The prosecutor's office seemed to accept this explanation without question. Lisa wasn't willing to give up so easily. She filed additional motions requesting Turner's training records, his arrest statistics, and any complaints that had been filed against him. The police department fought these requests, claiming they were irrelevant to Damon's case. Meanwhile, word about the case began spreading through the community. Dorothy Williams attended Mount Olive Baptist Church, where she'd been a member for 20 years. Pastor Williams, no relation, announced during Sunday service that one of their young members was facing unjust charges and needed the community's support. Community organizer Michael Torres heard about the case through the church network. Torres had been documenting police misconduct in the city for over a decade, and Turner's name was already on his radar. Torres visited Dorothy's house on a Thursday evening, bringing a thick folder of documents. "Mrs. Williams, I've been tracking Officer Turner for 2 years now. Your grandson isn't his first victim." Torres spread out photographs, police reports, and court documents across Dorothy's kitchen table. The evidence showed a clear pattern of Turner targeting young men of color in affluent neighborhoods. "Look at this case from 6 months ago," Torres pointed to a police report. 18-year-old college student arrested for suspicious behavior while walking to his job at a restaurant. The charges were eventually dropped, but not before the kid spent 2 nights in jail. "And this one," Torres continued, "a 16-year-old arrested for loitering while waiting for his mother to pick him up from basketball practice. Turner claimed the boy was casing houses for burglary." Dorothy studied the documents with growing anger. "How is this man still allowed to wear a badge?" "Police departments protect their own," Torres explained. "Complaints get buried, patterns get ignored, and officers like Turner keep collecting paychecks while destroying young lives." Torres helped Dorothy organize a community meeting at the church. Over 50 people attended, including several families who had dealt with Turner's misconduct. Their stories were remarkably similar to Damon's experience. Lisa Chen attended the meeting and was shocked by what she heard. Turner had been operating with impunity for years, but the community had been too intimidated or too poor to fight back effectively. "We need to document everything," Lisa told the group. "Every interaction, every arrest, every complaint. We're building a federal civil rights case, not just defending Damon's charges." The prosecutor assigned to Damon's case was David Morrison, a career prosecutor who'd been with the DA's office for 12 years. Morrison had worked with Turner on dozens of cases and generally trusted police reports without question. When Lisa filed her motion to dismiss all charges based on Mrs. Patterson's video evidence, Morrison was initially dismissive. "Police officers deal with uncooperative suspects all the time," he reasoned. "Sometimes force is necessary to maintain order." But when Morrison actually watched the video, he began to have doubts. The footage showed a polite, cooperative teenager who never displayed any threatening behavior. Turner's report described aggressive actions that simply weren't visible on the recording. Morrison called Turner into his office for a meeting. "Blake, I've reviewed the video evidence in the Williams case. Your report doesn't seem to match what happened." Turner remained confident. "David, you know how these videos can be misleading. You're only seeing part of the interaction. The kid was definitely up to no good in that neighborhood, but he was walking home from work. He had identification proving he lived nearby. Look, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I know suspicious behavior when I see it. This kid didn't belong in that neighborhood at that time of night. Morrison felt uncomfortable with Turner's attitude, but he also didn't want to admit that his office had been filing charges based on false police reports. He decided to proceed with the case, hoping it would result in a plea bargain that would make the whole situation disappear. Lisa Chen had different plans. She was determined to take this case to trial, knowing that Turner's misconduct needed to be exposed publicly. She spent countless hours preparing, interviewing witnesses, and building a comprehensive defense. 2 weeks before the trial date, Lisa received a call that would change everything. "Ms. Chen, this is Detective Williams from Internal Affairs. We need to talk about Officer Turner's body camera. I thought it malfunctioned during my client's arrest." That's what Turner reported, but our technical unit discovered something interesting when they examined the camera. "Can you meet me tomorrow morning?" Lisa's hands trembled as she hung up the phone. After weeks of preparation, it seemed like the case was about to take another dramatic turn. Dorothy Williams was praying in her kitchen when Lisa called with the update. "Mrs. Williams, I think we're about to get the break we've been waiting for." "What kind of break?" "I can't say for certain yet, but it involves Turner's body camera. Apparently, it might not have malfunctioned after all." Dorothy closed her eyes and whispered a prayer of thanksgiving. She'd been asking God for justice for her grandson, and it seemed like her prayers might finally be answered. Detective Rita Williams from Internal Affairs sat across from Lisa Chen in a sterile conference room at police headquarters. Between them lay a body camera and a laptop computer that would soon change everything. "Ms. Chen, 3 weeks ago our technical unit received Officer Turner's body camera for routine maintenance. All cameras get checked quarterly to ensure they're functioning properly." Lisa leaned forward, her heart racing. "What did you find?" "Well, Turner reported that his camera malfunctioned during the arrest of your client, but when our tech specialist examined it, he discovered something very interesting." Detective Williams opened the laptop and turned it toward Lisa. The camera was working perfectly. In fact, it recorded the entire incident. Lisa stared at the screen in disbelief, but Turner said it wasn't recording. Turner thought it wasn't recording. 6 months ago, we updated all body camera software to include an automatic activation feature. When an officer's heart rate spikes or when the camera detects sudden movement, it begins recording automatically, even if the manual activation hasn't been pressed. So Turner didn't know he was being recorded? Exactly. He manually turned off his camera at the beginning of his shift, which was standard practice until the new policy took effect last month. But the automatic system overrode his manual setting when he got out of his patrol car. Detective Williams pressed play on the video file. Lisa watched in amazement as crystal-clear footage showed the entire arrest from Turner's perspective. Unlike Mrs. Patterson's distant recording, this video captured every word, every gesture, and every expression. What Lisa saw made her stomach turn. The footage showed Damon walking peacefully down Oak Street, clearly wearing his grocery store uniform and carrying a work bag. Turner's own camera proved that Damon looked like exactly what he claimed to be, a teenager walking home from work. When Turner approached, Damon was immediately respectful and cooperative. He answered every question politely, provided identification without hesitation, and never made any threatening movements. But it was the audio that was most damning. Turner's voice was clearly captured, making statements that never appeared in his police report. "What's a kid like you doing in a neighborhood like this?" he asked. "These people don't want to see you wandering around their streets." When Damon explained he was walking home from work, Turner's response was chilling. "Sure you were, kid. I bet you were checking out which houses might be easy targets." The video showed Damon remaining calm and respectful throughout this verbal abuse. He never raised his voice, never made aggressive gestures, and repeatedly tried to explain his innocent presence in the neighborhood. The most shocking part came after Turner handcuffed Damon. With the teenager secured in the back of the patrol car, Turner spoke directly into his radio, knowing Damon could hear every word. "Central, this is Unit 47. I've got another one of these kids trying to case houses in Westside. They think they can just walk through any neighborhood they want, but I'm teaching them otherwise." Lisa's hands shook as she watched. The video completely destroyed Turner's credibility and revealed behavior that was not just unprofessional, but potentially criminal. "Detective Williams, This footage shows clear evidence of false arrest, filing a false police report, and possibly civil rights violations, I agree. That's why I'm sharing it with you before turning it over to the prosecutor's office. Your client deserves to know that we're taking this seriously. Lisa made copies of the video and immediately called Damon and his grandmother to schedule an emergency meeting. That evening, Lisa sat in Dorothy Williams' living room with laptop open, preparing to show them the evidence that would vindicate Damon completely. Before I show you this video, I want you to know that watching it might be difficult. You'll hear Officer Turner saying things that are painful and wrong. Dorothy reached for her grandson's hand. We need to see what really happened. The three of them watched in silence as Turner's own camera revealed his misconduct. When the video ended, Dorothy was crying and Damon was staring at the floor. I can't believe he said those things about me, Damon whispered. I was just trying to get home. Baby, this proves you were telling the truth about everything, Dorothy said, squeezing his hand. Now everyone will know you did nothing wrong. Lisa closed the laptop. This video changes everything. I'm filing a motion tomorrow to dismiss all charges. No prosecutor in their right mind would continue this case after seeing this evidence. The next morning, Lisa walked into Prosecutor David Morrison's office carrying the laptop and a stack of legal documents. Morrison had been dreading this meeting since Detective Williams called him the night before. David, I think you need to see this before we discuss any plea arrangements. Morrison watched the video with growing horror. As a prosecutor, he'd seen plenty of police misconduct over the years, but this case was particularly egregious. Turner hadn't just made a mistake. He'd deliberately targeted an innocent teenager and then lied about it in his official report. Lisa, I need to discuss this with my supervisor before making any decisions. David, this video makes it clear that my client is completely innocent. Every charge should be dropped immediately. Morrison nodded reluctantly. I'll call you by the end of the day. That afternoon, Morrison met with District Attorney Jennifer Rodriguez to review the evidence. Rodriguez had been DA for 8 years and had handled dozens of police misconduct cases. But Turner's behavior shocked even her. We have to drop all charges immediately, Rodriguez said after watching the video. This is indefensible. I agree, but what about Turner? This video shows him committing multiple crimes. I'm calling the FBI. This is a clear civil rights violation. Turner needs to be arrested and prosecuted federally. Rodriguez also made another decision that surprised Morrison. I want you to review every arrest Turner has made in the past 2 years. If this is how he behaves when he thinks nobody's watching, there might be other victims. Meanwhile, community organizer Michael Torres was planning a press conference to highlight Damon's case and the broader pattern of police misconduct in the city. He'd spent weeks documenting similar cases and building support from local civil rights organizations. Torres called Dorothy Williams with an update. Mrs. Williams, I've been in contact with several news organizations that want to cover Damon's story. Are you and your grandson willing to speak publicly about what happened? Dorothy discussed it with Damon, who was initially hesitant about the media attention. But his grandmother convinced him that speaking out might help other young people avoid similar situations. If telling my story can help somebody else, then I'll do it, Damon decided. Lisa Chen received the call she'd been waiting for at 4:30 p.m. Lisa, this is David Morrison. We're dropping all charges against your client immediately. The DA will make a public announcement tomorrow morning. What about Officer Turner? That's being handled separately. I can't discuss the details, but I can tell you that internal affairs and federal authorities are now involved. Lisa immediately called Dorothy and Damon with the news. The relief in their voices was overwhelming. Does this mean it's really over? Damon asked. The criminal charges are over, but we might consider filing a civil lawsuit against the police department. You suffered real harm because of Turner's actions. That evening, FBI agent Carlos Martinez was reviewing Turner's body camera footage for the 3rd time. As a federal civil rights investigator, Martinez had seen plenty of police misconduct cases, but Turner's behavior was particularly brazen. This officer thought he could abuse his authority because he believed nobody was watching, Martinez told his partner. He's about to learn that federal civil rights laws exist for exactly this reason. Martinez began preparing arrest warrants for Turner on charges of deprivation of rights under color of law, a federal crime that carried up to 10 years in prison. Officer Blake Turner was at home watching television when his cell phone rang. It was his supervisor, Captain Davis. "Blake, I need you to come to the station immediately. Internal Affairs wants to speak with you." Turner felt a flutter of nervousness. "What's this about?" "Just get down here as soon as possible." Turner hung up and tried to think of any recent incidents that might have attracted attention. The Williams arrest had been routine as far as he was concerned. The kid had been in the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time, and Turner had handled it appropriately. What Turner didn't know was that his own camera had recorded every word of his misconduct, and that recording was now in the hands of federal investigators who were preparing to arrest him. As Turner drove toward the police station, he remained confident that whatever questions Internal Affairs had could be easily answered. He'd been a police officer for 15 years and had never faced serious discipline. Turner was about to learn that 15 years of getting away with misconduct had finally come to an end. The video evidence was undeniable, and his career in law enforcement was over. The young man he'd arrested for walking home from work would soon be vindicated completely, while Turner himself would face the criminal charges he'd falsely placed on others. Justice was about to be served, captured in high definition on Turner's own body camera. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity on the morning of what everyone expected to be Damon Williams' preliminary hearing. News of the case had spread through social media and local news outlets after community organizer Michael Torres held his press conference 3 days earlier. Judge Patricia Martinez looked out at the crowded courtroom with concern. She'd been a judge for 12 years and rarely saw this level of public interest in a juvenile case. Officer Blake Turner sat at the prosecutor's table next to David Morrison, still believing he was there to testify about Damon's arrest. Turner had been suspended pending investigation, but he remained confident that Internal Affairs would clear him of any wrongdoing. What Turner didn't know was that FBI agents were waiting in the hallway with federal arrest warrants. Damon sat beside his attorney, Lisa Chen, wearing the same suit his grandmother had bought him for church. Dorothy Williams was in the front row, surrounded by members of Mount Olive Baptist Church who had come to show their support. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Martinez," the bailiff announced. Judge Martinez took her seat and reviewed the case file one final time. Earlier that morning, she'd received an unusual request from the prosecutor's office asking permission to dismiss all charges and present new evidence of police misconduct. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed with today's hearing, I understand the prosecution has a motion to present." David Morrison stood up, his hands trembling slightly. In 15 years as a prosecutor, he'd never had to ask a judge to dismiss charges because the arresting officer had committed crimes. "Your Honor, the state moves to dismiss all charges against the defendant Damon Williams. New evidence has come to light that completely exonerates Mr. Williams and reveals serious misconduct by the arresting officer." A murmur went through the courtroom. Turner's face went pale as he began to realize something was very wrong. Judge Martinez looked surprised. "Mr. Morrison, this is highly unusual. What new evidence are you referring to?" "Your Honor, we've discovered that Officer Turner's body camera was recording during the arrest contrary to his initial report. The footage shows that Mr. Williams was completely cooperative and that Officer Turner's police report contains multiple false statements." Turner leaned over to Morrison and whispered urgently, "David, what are you talking about? My camera wasn't working that night." Morrison ignored him and continued addressing the judge. "Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to present this video evidence so that the record is clear about what actually occurred." Judge Martinez was intrigued. In 12 years on the bench, she'd seen plenty of cases where police reports didn't match reality, but it was rare to have video evidence that definitively proved misconduct. "Mr. Morrison, I'll allow you to present the evidence, but I should note that this is highly irregular." Lisa Chen stood up. "Your Honor, the defense supports the prosecution's motion and welcomes the presentation of this evidence." Morrison set up a laptop and projector while the courtroom waited in tense silence. Turner's confidence was evaporating as he began to understand that his body camera might have betrayed him. When the video began playing, the courtroom fell completely silent. Turner's own camera showed crystal-clear footage of Damon walking peacefully down Oak Street in his work uniform. The audio was devastating. Turner's voice filled the courtroom as he made racist comments and false accusations against a polite, cooperative teenager. Spectators gasped when they heard Turner tell Damon that These people don't want to see you wandering around their streets. Damon watched himself on the screen, reliving the worst night of his life. Dorothy Williams cried quietly as she heard the officer's cruel words directed at her grandson. But the most shocking moment came when Turner's voice was heard over the radio, bragging about arresting another one of these kids who thought they could walk through any neighborhood they wanted. When the video ended, the courtroom was completely silent. Judge Martinez stared at Turner with undisguised disgust. "Officer Turner, is this your body camera footage?" Turner's face was bright red. He tried to speak but could only manage a whisper. "Your Honor, that footage doesn't show the full context of the situation. Officer Turner, I've just watched 12 minutes of unedited footage that completely contradicts your police report. Are you suggesting the video is somehow inaccurate?" Turner's attorney, who had been assigned by the police union just that morning, stood up. "Your Honor, my client invokes his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination." Judge Martinez nodded grimly. "Very wise, counsel." She turned to address the courtroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, I've been a judge for 12 years, and I've rarely seen evidence this clear of police misconduct. Mr. Williams, please stand." Damon stood beside Lisa Chen, his legs shaking. "Mr. Williams, all charges against you are hereby dismissed with prejudice. The court apologizes for the injustice you've suffered. Your behavior throughout this ordeal has been exemplary, and I hope you can move forward from this experience." The courtroom erupted in applause. Dorothy Williams stood and hugged her grandson while tears streamed down her face. Judge Martinez banged her gavel for order. "Furthermore, I'm ordering that a copy of this video be forwarded to the FBI, the District Attorney's Civil Rights Division, and the Police Department's Internal Affairs Unit for immediate investigation." As the hearing concluded, FBI agent Carlos Martinez entered the courtroom with 2 other agents. Turner saw them approaching and knew his career was over. "Blake Turner, you're under arrest for deprivation of rights under color of law, filing false police reports, and conspiracy to obstruct justice." Turner's hands were cuffed behind his back as Agent Martinez read him his rights. The same handcuffs that had been used on Damon were now binding the corrupt officer who had abused his authority. As Turner was led away, he passed Damon and his family. For just a moment, their eyes met. Turner saw no anger in the young man's face, only sadness that the system had failed so badly. Outside the courthouse, Damon faced a crowd of reporters and supporters. He'd never spoken publicly before, but his grandmother encouraged him to tell his story. "I want people to know that I was just trying to walk home from work," Damon said into the microphones. "I wasn't doing anything wrong, and I didn't deserve to be treated like a criminal. But I also want people to know that the system worked in the end. The truth came out, and justice was served." Community organizer Michael Torres stood beside Damon. "This case shows why we need body cameras on every police officer, and why communities must hold law enforcement accountable. Damon's courage in fighting these false charges has helped expose a pattern of misconduct that might have continued for years." Lisa Chen addressed the media as well. "This case demonstrates the importance of having strong public defenders who are willing to fight for their clients. Without the video evidence and community support, an innocent young man might have been convicted of crimes he didn't commit," Detective Rita Williams from Internal Affairs announced that the police department was reviewing all of Turner's arrests from the past 3 years. "We take allegations of misconduct very seriously, and we're committed to ensuring that officers who abuse their authority are held accountable." Over the following weeks, 12 other cases involving Turner's arrests were dismissed after prosecutors determined that his police reports were unreliable. 3 additional federal civil rights investigations were opened based on similar patterns of misconduct. Damon returned to his normal routine of school and work, but the experience had changed him. He began volunteering with Michael Torres's organization, helping to document police misconduct and support other families facing similar situations. "I never thought something like this could happen to me," Damon told a youth group at his church, "but I learned that staying silent about injustice only makes it worse. We have to speak up when we see things that are wrong." Dorothy Williams became an advocate for police reform, speaking at community meetings and working with local officials to improve oversight of law enforcement. "My grandson could have been just another statistic if we hadn't had video evidence and community support," she said. "How many other young people have been convicted based on false police reports?" Mrs. Patterson, the neighbor who recorded the initial arrest, was recognized by the NACP for her courage in coming forward. "I couldn't just sit in my kitchen and watch injustice happen on my street," she said. "Sometimes being a good neighbor means getting involved when you see something wrong." 6 months later, Turner pled guilty to federal civil rights violations and was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. He also lost his pension and was banned from working in law enforcement for life. The police department implemented new policies requiring all body cameras to remain activated during any interaction with civilians. They also created a civilian oversight board to review complaints against officers. Damon received a full scholarship to community college, funded by donations from people who heard his story. He plans to study criminal justice and become a lawyer like Lisa Chen. "I want to help other people who find themselves in situations like mine," Damon explained. "Everyone deserves to have someone fighting for them when they're facing false accusations." Lisa Chen was promoted to supervising attorney at the public defender's office, partly due to her excellent work on Damon's case. She continues to handle police misconduct cases and has never lost sight of why she became a public defender. "Cases like Damon's remind me why this work matters," she said. "Sometimes the system fails, but when we fight hard enough and have the evidence to back it up, justice can prevail." The video of Turner's arrest and misconduct was viewed millions of times online, sparking nationwide conversations about police accountability and the importance of body cameras. Damon's case became a textbook example of how technology and community activism can work together to expose corruption and protect civil rights. A year after his arrest, Damon walked across the stage at his high school graduation. His grandmother cried tears of joy as he received his diploma and several academic awards. The young man who had been falsely accused of being a criminal was now headed to college with dreams of becoming a civil rights attorney. In his graduation speech, Damon told his classmates, "Life sometimes puts obstacles in our path that seem impossible to overcome. But if we stay true to ourselves and have the courage to fight for what's right, we can turn even the worst experiences into opportunities to make the world better." Turner, meanwhile, served his time in federal prison, thinking every day about the night he decided to arrest an innocent teenager for walking home from work. His moment of recorded laughter had cost him everything: his career, his freedom, and his reputation. Justice had been served, captured forever on video, ensuring that the truth would never be forgotten.